Honeymoon hotspot workers, what are your best and worst stories regarding newlyweds? Story 1. I frequent a natural hot springs in Alaska that has a high influx of Asian tourists and newlyweds during winter. The hot springs create huge steam clouds that make the visibility very low while wading in the waist-high water. Apparently, the newlyweds from Japan, I think, believe that consummating their marriage under the northern lights will give them a male child. So they go to the hot springs in the middle of winter when it's dark outside and bang in the water. It's really weird to be there, wading around, and accidentally run into a couple of mating Asians in the water. Story 2. I live in Las Vegas, and I used to work in one of the major casinos on the Strip. One night, in one of our clubs during a wedding reception, one of my employees let me know that she heard multiple people in a bathroom stall. The stalls had full doors so you couldn't see feet, but you could definitely hear some debauchery going on. I called security and they asked the people to open the door. So, out comes a groomsman, followed by the bride, followed by the best man, followed by the groom, all half naked. They proceed to go right back to the reception like nothing ever happened. Story 3. I'm the evening maintenance at a resort, and we get a call that a room has a light bulb out. Cool, something to do. So I hop on one of my speed golf carts and make my way to the room with the light bulb in hand. I arrive to said room and I knock on the door and announce maintenance. I hear a man say, "Come in." So I grab my key card, swipe myself in, and lo and behold, the hairiest Russian dude and his smoking hot wife jump from the bed, buttoning up their drawers, wide-eyed as deer in the headlights. I 180, tractor beamed my eyeballs to the floor, apologized, and waded out of the door. Harry, the Russian, opens the door, and instead of going in to change the bulb, I just said, "Here you go." I just handed it to him and hightailed it out of there. After long thought, I came to the conclusion he had said coming, but I misheard behind all of his chest hair, and his accent. Story 4. A couple came into my camera shop during the old days of film, and explained that they were honeymooning, and were concerned that their roll of photos of the honeymoon just kept going for some reason, like way past the 36 frames. When I told them there was no film in the camera, the honeymoon ended right there for the poor bastard husband whose job it was to load the camera. Oh, if looks could kill. Story 5. This probably doesn't count. I worked at a goddamn Dairy Queen. Hotspot? Maybe not. Anyway, this couple comes up to the counter, gushing and talking about how they just got married X days ago. They were clearly looking for someone to comp their first shared blizzard. What they didn't realize was that I knew the girl involved, from a church-related thing no less. The relationship was just distant enough so that she didn't recognize me without context. Clearly, they were dating or friends or something who decided to try and get free ice cream. If she'd truly been engaged, I would have known. Anyway, I said in my sweetest voice, "Sure, name of the girl, and congrats." Her face was priceless, both at the time and later when I saw her among church people. Totally worth the money I had to eat for the blizzard. Story 6. A Christian couple I know had never banged before their wedding night. The guy wanted to break the ice, so he got naked while his bride was in the sweet bathroom on their honeymoon. He spread-eagled and aimed his butt towards the bathroom door. His bride comes out and he rips a fart, but crap came out. He crapped the bed and she locked herself in the bathroom for 7 hours crying. They're fine now, but I bet she wanted a divorce that night. Story 7. Okay, so I work at a high-end, all-inclusive hotel in SoCal. Honeymooners often come here, and for some reason, crap seems to always get really, really weird. Possibly because I know one of my coworkers sells drugs. So one night at like 3 a.m., we get a request for room service, and they want mustard, ketchup, and a bun. So, just to get this straight, they did not ask for a hot dog. Being that we are all about customer service, I go into the kitchen and get all of the items and bring it up to the room. I knock once, no answer. Twice, no answer. Then, finally, after the third knock, I get an answer. I give them their mustard, ketchup, and bun on the platter, and this dude rips off the top of it, grabs the bun, whips out his dong, and sticks it right in. The new wife grabs the ketchup and mustard and dumps it all over it. They both start hysterically laughing and close the door. I was at a loss of words for hours, so I guess they got me pretty good. Story 8. I worked at a resort on Vancouver Island. We also rented houses to families. This one couple on their honeymoon rented a 3-story house in the summer. They looked like a normal pair of people, but dang, I was wrong. Checking the house a week later to make sure they left, the woman had stuck used tampons in the drains and smeared blood on the walls. There were holes in every door and most walls. TV was smashed. Everything went wrong. Story 9. I'm not a honeymoon hotspot worker, but I do have a good story at a resort with honeymooners. When I was 19, I went to Hilton Head, South Carolina with my girlfriend at the time and her mother and brother. We were staying in a timeshare that her mom and uncles shared, and it was a pretty nice place. One night, my ex and I decided to go out to the hot tub for some alone time. However, there was already a couple there. We still wanted to go into the hot tub, so we went anyway. She was a real personable person, and so she started a conversation with the couple right away. And that's when we found out they were on their honeymoon. We all kept talking, and after a bit, they offered us some of the champagne they had, which we eagerly accepted. After the bottle was finished, we were all trying to decide what to do. My ex and I had some weed we planned on smoking and decided to ask the couple if they wanted any, since they were kind enough to share their champagne. They accepted right away and invited us over to where they were staying. Edit. If you want a fake foursome story, like most have been anticipating, stop here and skip to the next edit. If you want the real story, here you go. We smoked and drank wine with them until we were all pretty gone. That's when the couple started getting really emotional and serious. They told us that we were a cute couple and that we were young, so we shouldn't get ourselves tied down so early. By what they were saying, it almost seemed like they were having some reservations about the marriage, which made it really awkward for us. My ex and I exchanged looks, trying to look for a way out, since the night was taking a turn we weren't looking for. When she got a call from her brother asking where we were out. We said our goodbyes and congratulated them again before we left. That night and that couple has really stuck with me over the years, and I honestly hope everything ended up well with them, because they were really cool and really nice. Fake edit. We got back, and as we packed a bowl, they offered us some wine. We drank and smoked until eventually the idea of a foursome was brought up. We were all pretty gone at this point, and this was their first night together as a married couple, so it seemed like a great idea. We decided to make a game of it though and played a strip version of Never Have I Ever, using all of our fingers instead of just 3 so we would ensure we'd be naked. After about 20 minutes, we were all pretty much naked and things got heated. My ex started making out with her, but before anything happened, we decided that we should smoke another bowl. That's when I decided to be a jerk and derail this whole story by saying thank you for choosing this adventure. Story 10. A while back in the long ago, I work at a 4-star hotel. A couple came in for their honeymoon, but they forgot to bring in protection and they didn't have any in their rooms and the public toilet on the first floor was out. So the guy asked me in a clearly needy voice where he could procure himself some contraception. I told him I would get him some. I went to the staff bathroom and got 4 for $2. Yes, we get them cheaper, and brought them to him and he was so glad he gave me $100 for a tip. Story 11. I used to work at a Hilton hotel near Disney, and there was a newlywed couple that had come down from their room and said they had just gotten married and they were looking for the nearest Topless bar. I'm confused as to how forward they were and why they would want to spend their wedding night at a topless bar. But anyway, I directed them down a sleazy part of town and told them there were plenty down the road. Later, I was so shocked I told my coworker what had just happened and what they were looking for. He then called me an idiot and said they were probably asking for a tapas bar. Well, crap. That was the first time I had ever heard of said place and never knew they existed or were called that. Story 12. I work at a hotel restaurant. One day we hosted a wedding reception for a young couple who paid for an open bar. The party was a blast. People got wasted and had tons of fun. Around 2 a.m., the bride and groom and their closest friends finally left the restaurant to go back to their room. Apparently, they decided to all hang out in a room for a while and continue the party. From what I heard, at some point the maid of honor called the bride a lesbian and the groom socked said maid in the face. She ran, screaming to the front desk and called the police. The groom was arrested and taken to jail on his wedding night for assaulting the maid of honor. 1 year later, the couple returned to the restaurant for their anniversary. They were super cool and seemed really happy. Story 13. I work at a high-end couples retreat which honeymooners often come to. I guess you would say it's a more on the best side of the stories, as every time this certain couple would come to breakfast/dinner, the quite attractive girl would always be wearing see-through tops with no bra. And when I took food to their rooms on multiple occasions, the woman would open the door in her underwear or be naked under the covers in her bed. I've had a few drunken honeymooners invite me back to their room for drinks, but I've never taken them up on the offer. I'd like to keep my job, thanks. Story 14. I don't work at a honeymoon hotspot, but over winter break I went on a cruise. My cousin and I had met this couple on the cruise that were on their honeymoon. The husband was pretty chill and the wife seemed really nice too. I think they were in their 20s. He was like 27 and she 24. I was drunk the whole cruise, so I may be wrong. Well, anyway, we had hung out with them just about every night partying and drinking at the bar. Well, on the last night, my oldest cousin went to bed early, and it was just I and my other cousin. It was around 2 in the morning and we were just chillin', being all drunk, enjoying food, when all of a sudden she comes stumbling into the restaurant and sat with us. She told us her husband went to bed and she was lonely. We openly invited her to join us, and that's when she completely opened up. She was saying how turned on she was and how she had been keeping her eye on us. We thought she was joking, but then she turned and said that if she wasn't recently married, she would have loved to bang with my cousin and I. We didn't know what to do, so we just walked her to her room and said goodnight. But I really have felt bad for her husband. She tried to apologize to us the next day, but my cousin got mad and told her how she better get her act together. My cousin is 23, by the way, and I'm 20. Story 15. I work as a manager for a resort on a Pacific island. I can't say which because it would be a little too identifying. Anyways, this man turns up out of the blue. Seemed a bit of a downer, but boy did he know his way around a cocktail bar, so I hired him as a bartender. And what a mistake that was. Not only had he banged half the waitresses within a month, but he'd also banged a couple newlywed brides on their honeymoons. How do you do that? Then one day he disappeared the same way he showed up, out of the blue. Maybe it had something to do with that guy with the seaplane. Story 16. I was in Mexico with my mother and sister. As we were walking down an outdoor path in the resort, we saw a young girl crying and her boyfriend walking behind her frantic. They were both covered in cuts and bruises, surrounded by security and medical, and of course on their honeymoon. I asked one of the staff what had happened. The couple was banging on their balcony and fell off. Apparently not too high off the ground, but high enough to be beaten and shook up. Story 17. It wasn't even remotely close to a honeymoon hotspot, and that was the sad part. I was 17 and working at a particularly crappy open-air motel on the night shift next to the nicest hotel in town, which really wasn't saying much. A young couple came in practically in tears because the honeymoon suite they'd booked at the nicer hotel had rented out their room, and there wasn't really anywhere else to stay, so they came to our motel. It was literally the only one in town that had a single room to rent. I felt terribly sorry for them and gave them the biggest discount I could and let them into that last crappy room. While they were getting their luggage, I remembered the suite right above the office that was usually rented out as an apartment. It wasn't any great shakes of an apartment, but it was the best we had. I didn't say anything to the couple right away, but went upstairs and did the best I could to scrub off the dust and spiders and rub a bleach rag over the linoleum. It took me about an hour, and I was pretty proud of myself for getting the room ready as quick as I had, given the decrepit condition it was generally left in. I threw the bleach rags and dirty linens into the laundry room and went to go bring the couple to their fancy-ish new suite. I knocked, but no one came to the door. The new husband eventually asked what I needed, and I told them about their room. I was sadly puzzled that they didn't want to seem to leave even just to check it out, and that they didn't even come to the door or turn on the lights, and that the new bride kept giggling. I made my way sadly back to the front office and concluded that they must have been really tired after such a long day. They sounded a lot happier than they did when they first came in though, so I figured my efforts weren't a total waste. Story 18. I worked overnight at a hotel which pretty much involved me sitting at a desk watching twerk videos until the phone rang. A guy called to complain about room 114 because the guy was watching adult videos on full volume. This was the usual routine for me. Every Saturday, this guy would rent the same damn room and I'd get a noise complaint that he was watching adult videos too loud. I would go and bang on the door, no one would answer, and then he'd settle down for a bit and then start back up. Then the phone would ring again with another complaint and I'd have to comp the room for his unfortunate neighbor. Well, tonight, I was fed up. I kept banging and screamed, "I know you're in there! This is getting old! Open up!" After a few minutes, the door opened up to reveal a camera on a tripod, a naked woman in bed, and him naked from the waist down with a camera in hand. He told me he shoots adult videos here, and that's what the noise was. He asked me if I ever wanted to bang one of his girls. I must have turned temporarily stupid because that's the only logical reason I said no thanks. He offered me a $50 tip to continue to allow him to film at our facility because the last place kicked him out. For the rest of my time there, he got complimentary upgrades to our suites every Saturday. Story 19. Got married in Hawaii, staying at a swanky resort. Late one afternoon, my wife was getting out of the shower, and I had boxers on laying in bed after a long day at the beach. When out of nowhere, I hear the front door opening up. I thought it was my wife, and she thought it was me. But in walks a couple with luggage and keycard in hand asking what we're doing in their room. Needless to say, we were upgraded to an oceanfront suite for the rest of our stay due to the screw-up at the front desk. We were also comped meals for the rest of our stay, and half of our bill was also comped. Story 20. I worked as a bartender at a pretty nice hotel. There was a big convention center attached to it with a lot of meeting rooms and a huge ballroom. I wasn't always aware what was going on at the convention center unless the hotel was full for a convention. It had been a fairly quiet night, and I didn't have anyone else sitting at the bar, when a guy takes a seat and orders a beer. I got it for him, and he looked like he was kind of upset, like something was really weighing on him. But I didn't want to pry. Some people don't always want to talk. This guy did. He said, "Aren't bartenders supposed to listen to your problems?" I said, "Sure, man, what do you want to talk about?" He begins to tell me that he had gotten married that day. They had the reception next door and were staying the night in the hotel. I congratulate him, but I'm a bit confused as to why he's sitting here by himself on his wedding night. He tells me that he's in his 30s and his bride is 26. They'd been together at least a year and a half, and she's a virgin and he's not. I'm still confused as to why he's not consummating his new marriage, and then he tells me she was so nervous about their big night that she drank too much champagne and was in the room passed out. I had to take a second to keep my composure and not chuckle at this poor guy's misfortune, because he was obviously really upset about it. He explains that they're taking a flight out tomorrow and then getting on a cruise for their honeymoon. I did my best to try and reassure and be optimistic for him. I said something about nerves, and I was sure that everything would work out for him on the cruise. He seemed a little better than when he first sat down, but he still looked frustrated, and who could blame him? He ordered another beer and went back to his room. Story 21. I'm a wedding photographer, and a groom recently returned from honeymoon told me the story of how he got his $15,000 honeymoon free of charge. He and his brand new lady wife had just checked into the honeymoon suite of a palatial island paradise after a long flight from London. Having showered after their journey, they retired to the bed to celebrate their new reunion. Once the throes of passion had subsided, the groom tells me he saw the drapes by the window move a little and jumping up. He pulled them aside to see a bellhop concealed there and, you guessed it, having a bit of twang on the old one-string bass. Naturally, they complained, and the manager, seeking to minimize the damage, fired the employee on the spot and basically traded the full stay in return for them taking the incident no farther. Story 22. I used to work events at a high-end place that did conferences and wedding receptions. To give you an idea, 1 to 2 year waiting list for wedding receptions and cheapest plan/menu was $300 ahead. Plus, being a hotel, the bride and groom stay in a room on the night. Propositioned so many times. Once, every staff member got handed a photo, and it was a "do not allow to enter and to call security." It was the groom's mother. Apparently, she hated the bride so much they put an AVO out on her. Took 3 police officers to get her into the police car. She bit one of the security staff. Also, a bride so drunk they refused to allow her to sign the marriage certificate. The ceremony and reception went ahead, but the marriage officially happened the next day when sober. The best and most memorable, the bride's father was paying for the reception. Groom asked for a few projectors to be set up so that he could play a movie and photo montage of their relationship. All's going well for 5 minutes, until it hits a scene of the bride being pounded by 2 guys, neither of which is the groom, one of which was the best man. Still to this day don't know who the other guy was. During the video, the groom had left via a cab. One other time, the newlyweds had a cab call to the airport. We rang the room 30 minutes before the cab call as a courtesy. No answer. Manager goes and knocks and no reply. So he used the house key and there's the couple sleeping. Her in her wedding dress and him in the suit, covered in vomit. So many have tried, "We are honeymoon couple, please give us freebies" as well. Story 23. I worked as a guest service agent/bellman at a nice hotel chain. One weekend, during a wedding in one of our banquet rooms, I was befriended by a groomsman. Chubby little guy, but very nice nonetheless. Participated in a few staged wedding shots around the hotel and whatnot. After getting to know them a little bit, I found the entire group of bridesmaids and groomsmen were very close. The chubby little guy was particularly close to the bride. I thought nothing of it. As the reception began later in the evening, I'm paged by the front desk to visit a room that had a call for distress. These pages are normal on a wild Saturday night. I grab security and go up to said room. The groomsman that I had befriended earlier had tried to commit suicide. He had ingested many pills and was laying in the tub half filled with water. The call for distress actually came from his mother, who was living in the same city, and she was the first person he called informing he was going to end it. He had apparently backed out halfway. Long story short, we wheel him out to the ambulance and the bride and groom are there waiting for us in the lobby. As he is leaving with the crew, he tells the bride he is sorry and didn't want to suicide on the same day they were getting married, but he loved her too much to go on. They had a short exchange and then he was whisked away. The bride was furious. Apparently, he handed her a letter of reasons why they were supposed to be together as well. All the while, the groom was just completely dumbfounded. He had no clue. One of the most ridiculous and awkward things I've seen at a wedding. Oh, and the groomsmen ended up being fine, made a full recovery. Not sure if they're still hanging out though. Story 24. I was serving at a wedding for a few years that probably fits in the most embarrassing category. It was part of the reception where everyone gives a speech or a quick toast. When we weren't serving, we were expected to line up a specific way, and I'm standing there facing the bridal party from across the room. The bride's mother gets up and does this very touching speech on how she wished grandma had been able to see it, and what a beautiful bride her daughter was. Then she pulls out this box and she says she has something from Grandma. She pulls out this old doll, the kind with the huge fluffy dress that people used to set on the bed as decoration. She hands it up to the bride, who starts telling her guests how she always loved this doll since she was a kid, and she wondered what had happened to it after Grandma died. So the photographer comes up to get a picture of her with the doll, and right as she poses, this silver little ball on a cord falls out the bottom of the doll. At first, I didn't know what it was, but the bride picked it up to look and immediately freaked and dropped it, which set the crowd off. One of my coworkers had to explain to me that it was a vibrating egg, a sex toy, and it was probably Grandma's. To this day, I wonder what kind of photos, if any, the photographer caught of that moment. Story 25. I used to be a bouncer at a nightclub that was part of a major hotel in San Francisco. People would get married and have their reception in the hotel and then head to the club after. One night, a couple 2 hours fresh from the altar and their party was in the club. They are sloshed, but the bride is beyond drunk and causing problems. Stumbling into people, being too loud, and trying to cross the VIP rope that I'm guarding. Anyway, she gets across the rope, and while I'm trying to persuade to go back to the other side, she starts grinding on me and saying, "You think you can handle me?" Her husband is about 3 feet away with his jaw on the floor. I asked him to control his wife, and he snapped out of his shock. He grabbed her wrist and dragged her out of the club, swearing up a storm. I still feel bad for the guy.